there were some times where we got to a place where like, I wish we didn't already book our plane ticket, because now like I totally could have stayed here for way longer. Or you get to India and you book everything out in advance, and then you're like, wow, I'm really glad we have 5 weeks and 115 degrees.
Because another thing that like friends say to each other, let's go travel the world for a year, and it's like, I know nobody. You guys are the only people that I know of who just, as like two couples coming together and then going out on this, is so unique, but also really cool. And the reality is that there's a lot of like just really hard times when you're in these situations, because you're in a new place all the time.
Yeah.
Every time you go somewhere, you don't know where you go to get food. You don't know where anything is. What's up, everybody? Quick little announcement here. Kind of a bummer. We had some issues with the camera. So at the beginning of this podcast, there's going to be some glitching and some like going black and then coming back. Don't be alarmed, not your computer. That's all our issue. I felt like the podcast was so good and we don't want to reshoot because we want to keep it authentic and real to the moment that we had. And I feel like if we reshot, the storytelling might not be such a raw representation of it. And so, again, super sorry. If you can't deal with the glitching and all that, just listen to it. It's super good. Brittany's story is amazing. Her and her husband and her two friends traveled the entire world, and this is kind of the whole story of her life up to that point and what all that looked like and how did two just young couples get it all together to actually be able to drop everything and travel the world. But beyond that, we talked about a ton of other things, so I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much. Again, so sorry about the quality issue. Let's roll into it. What's up, everybody? Joshua Thomas Gray here for another podcast. I'm here with an awesome person today with an incredible story that I think everybody's going to dig a lot. World traveling with you and your husband and friends, which was super sick, which you could actually check out on YouTube just under Britt Johnson.
Yeah.
And then you're a dog groomer. Which is the best. The Instagram posts of these dogs are fantastic.
It's the best part.
And then future plans of some awesome, epic van adventures for the future. Yeah. But yeah. Oh, and some videography action, dabbling, getting into some jobs here and there, weddings.
Birth videos.
Yeah. So we could talk about that too. But yeah, we're just going to dive right into it.
Thanks
Who
for
are
having
you?
Me. Well, I'm Brittany, and I don't know. What do you want to know? What do you want to know so far?
I actually don't even know where you're from or anything.
I know. I was thinking about that
start,
today.
Like from the beginning, which is what I typically do. I like to share people's like full stories because a lot of people start later, like right where you're traveling the world for a year. And it's like, that's super cool. But I find that the context of like family, where you were born, and all the way up to that point normally has this huge depth that most people miss. And it's just that everybody's just a normal person. But if you start at the point where you're like packing up and leaving on a year adventure, well, all of a sudden you're not really that normal anymore.
Right. It can kind of skew
you're not as relatable. And so the whole point is like stories that are inspiring, that give people hope and cause them to do something. And I feel like your story definitely does that because you didn't like randomly inherit a whole bunch of money or like nothing like that. Pretty normal, I would say, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So let's just start with where you grew up and what was your home life like?
Yeah. It's a super good question, and I totally agree, because I would say there's nothing really that special about us, but I think all the things now when I look back, I can see how like, because I had this opportunity growing up, it's definitely pointed me in this direction. So,
nice.
I was born in Bellingham, Washington at St. Joseph's Hospital,
nice.
May 3rd, 1991. And we grew up on Lake Whatcom. My dad is a mechanic. He started when he was like 14 working on cars, and he still does it today. So a long time. He had a local car shop, and in 1999, he sold his business and we sold our house on Lake Whatcom and decided to move to Orcas Island. And we had always gone out there like every summer. My grandparents had property out there, so we would like spend the summers out there. So, but the best part about it is kind of had to do with Y2K, the good like.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I kind of know a little bit about
so
this.
my dad is like, if you ever meet my dad, he is like the most fascinating human being you can ever meet. Like he is like super ADD, has like 10,000 different projects and ideas and inventions. But he also loves conspiracies. So I've grown up like, man, just deep in conspiracies. But so part of it, I would like to say all of it was the reason we moved to Orcas Island. But year 2000 was coming. All the computers were going to crash. The world was going to end. Yeah. Definitely. So we had like straight up food supplies and we were ready.
Like in the basement, you had a bunker.
Yeah, we
and
had a
everything.
shed and it had, stuff's probably still in there.
Definitely.
But made it out to Orcas, 99. New Year's hit. Everything was fine.
Wait, what? How does that go down? Like, what did your dad do? Just kind of blow it off? Like, oh yeah.
I think he was a little disappointed because I think there's
He
some joy.
wanted
I
it to
think
happen.
there'd be some joy in being like, see, I told you I wasn't crazy, you know?
Yeah, and then he'd be
So,
the one to survive.
yeah.
And he'd be like,
Yeah.
see?
I mean, he's pretty level-headed. I think like he enjoys like entertaining all these ideas, and he's
Yeah.
like, well, you might as well like have like supplies in case there's the mega quake or
Right.
like things like that.
Totally.
But he doesn't let his like life be ruled with fear at the same time.
Still living his life.
Yeah.
But he's definitely overly prepared.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
So funny.
So yeah, I moved out to Orcas. I had 10 people in my graduating class.
Ooh.
My brother, when he graduated, I have a brother named Matt, and he's 2 years older than me. He lives in LA. He does 3D video projection art.
Nice.
Travels the world. He's incredible. He was the only person in his graduating class.
Wow.
So very
Tiny,
small. Yeah.
Tiny school.
But it definitely forced our childhood out there, definitely forced us to be either you go to like drugs and partying or you invent ideas and you entertain yourself. So I'm super grateful we grew up like on a farm on the beach, and we had like woods and a creek, so we were always outside. I loved animals. Yeah, and then my school, I went to a private Christian school. We had a lot of interesting opportunities through that. So like I got really into like kind of more adventurous extreme sports. All my friends played like basketball and stuff, but we had scuba diving. I did high school sailing. And in 8th grade, we learned how to like fly airplanes. So
Wait, like
from
real airplanes?
Yeah, we like did like ground school, but
What?
Yeah. So I guess I've always been drawn because of that a little bit like to the edges of just like not normal childhood. So when you graduate, when you're 18, there's no like college out there or anything. So like everyone moves off island. So yeah, if you stay, like you're the only person there. That's until like maybe like 35-year-olds that are like coming back with their kids and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I moved to Bellingham. During that time though, I had met Steve. So when I was 17, I worked at Camp Furwood, and I was a CIT. Growing up on Lake Whatcom, we'd always like gone to the Firs and done like camps and stuff. So even when we moved out to Orcas Island, I still
Which Camp Furwood, for people who don't know anything about this area, can you explain?
Yeah, so it's a Christian camp down on Lake Whatcom.
Yeah. But it's like legit. It's like when you see the summer camps in movies, that's this place.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was a kid, they used to have horses. Yeah. And I was like horribly allergic to horses, but I love them so much. Oh so I'd take like
just like dying in
I
the corner
popped like
with
Benadryl, like a 12-year-old, and then like love every second of it, and then just like sleep the rest of the day during like free time. But yeah, so I went back. I didn't know anyone when I was choosing to work on staff that year. I was 17, and I met Steve, and yeah, so we have known each other for like 11 years.
Nice.
So it's cool that which is interesting because I feel like you and Kristen met when you were super young too.
Mm-hmm. And I knew Steve because we went to school together.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've known him forever.
He's from Linden. That's good. So yeah, we got married in 2012, which was supposed to be when the world was going to end. It didn't. It's great. My dad was really happy about that. So we've been married for 7 years. But
nice.
I don't know. I feel like that's the beginning of.
That's awesome. So at what point though, when you were young, did you have dreams of like traveling the world or anything? Was that something that you aspired to?
Yeah, good question. Kind of. Yeah, I think my dad, neither of my parents went to college, but they did travel a little bit, like when they first got married, to like New Zealand and Fiji. And so
nice.
He had always been like, that's the best education you can get, is to like go out and see different cultures. So he's always been like super supportive. Yeah. My mom has always been like super protective, like, yes, go and experience the world, but please come home.
Yeah.
And be safe. And then it wasn't until I was 19 and kind of like, what am I going to do with life, that I chose to do Youth with a Mission, YWAM.
Yeah.
And the school I picked, because I had done sailing and scuba diving, it was a sailing scuba diving school.
Nice. Again, maybe explain what YWAM is.
Yeah. So YWAM is, it's
Youth with a Mission.
Youth with a Mission. So it trains and equips usually like 18 to 25-year-olds. There's like a 3-month discipleship training school. So my DTS was in Belize, and that's where we did like the scuba diving and sailing as well. So on the weekends we would get to have these kind of like adventure elements. So a lot of YWAM bases have some sort of like photography or like snowboarding or things like that. And then for 2 months I was in El Salvador for my outreach. So that's where you get to take the lessons that you've kind of learned during your training school, of just like how to love people well and how to like meet people's physical needs first, and then get to put that into action. So
yeah. So what kind of stuff were you doing?
It was insane. So it was funny because we had 2 options. You could choose to go to Turkey or El Salvador. I chose El Salvador because I knew some Spanish. And the Turkey team, because it's such a like closed nation, they had to be very careful, and kind of like more secretive with just like presenting who they were and things like that, and their intention. Which their intention was to like love without an agenda, and like I said, like meet people's needs first, but every day was kind of like very strategic and like super careful. Whereas for us in El Salvador, every day was like, okay, we have this plan, we have like a million opportunities to go to like public schools and talk to them about our faith and like sing songs and play games and stuff. But every day something in the plan would go wrong, and so we'd have to change our plans completely. So that was a really good 2 months of just like so much frustration and being able to like adapt to change a lot. So
and then statistically, like that's a dangerous place in the world.
El Salvador.
Yeah.
So and
you're like young group of kids in a place that's like known to be a very dangerous place, but then it's actually kind of backed up with some stats where it's like, it's actually not the safest place.
And the base that we were at was very interesting because they had been there for like 5 years, and the community, we're in San Salvador, which is the capital, which is like the dangerous city in El Salvador.
Nice.
And our buildings had like barbed wire around the top, like all the buildings did. And we were like in the gang neighborhood, but the neighborhood respected their organization so much because they would bring so much to the community. And they knew like what their heart was and their intent. So I never really felt unsafe. Like we would go out in like the nighttime and go and just like bring people sandwiches, and they just loved us. So I think
it's so
you
good.
have to, if you have the right resources and wisdom, to not just be like, oh, let's go walk around.
You're with people who have been there for
exactly.
a long, like a decade maybe or longer.
So
Like these people are in that community, which is a rough and hard community, but it's not like you just showed up yesterday
Yeah.
and are like, hey,
Yeah.
like these people know those people and they understand like, no, they've been here for like the long haul. They're not just showing up for like some handouts and good photo ops. Like
Right.
they've been here for a long
We're
time.
going to build a house and then never see you again.
Right.
Good luck.
That's
totally.
Yeah. That's how much did that experience influence your life after that? Where it's like, dude, I just went to like what in our news and stuff is like the worst place ever. You're going to get shot, killed, stabbed, for sure stabbed. That's going to happen if you go there.
Or, which is funny because people in other countries are like, oh, you live in America? Don't you get like shot in school?
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So then you went and you're like, I actually didn't ever feel unsafe. Not that it's not real, just like when somebody from another country says, aren't you going to get shot at school? You're like, what are you even talking about? But it's like, well, no, that has happened actually over and over and over again. But no, I don't feel like I'm going to get shot if I go to school.
Right.
But it's this flip. And it's like, once you go there and really experience that, I feel like it just can't make a huge impact on people's lives.
Right.
So what was that experience like for you? And did that shape much of moving forward in your life, including things like going on a trip around the planet?
Right. It probably isn't what you'd expect.
Yeah.
So Steve and I started dating a week before I left to YWAM.
Nice.
And everyone said, oh, you guys are going to break up, which is funny because we're the only couple that started going into it that are still together. So everyone broke up like a month into it. And I was like, no, I'm going to marry him.
Nice.
So he surprised me and flew down for Valentine's Day. And that was the first time he's ever been on an airplane. It might have even, I think he'd been to Canada, but had never been out of Washington, like in the States.
Dang.
And he flew by himself internationally to Belize, met his sister and brother-in-law, and they traveled in Central America for like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But so he got back from the trip and was like, I want to see everywhere, and was like, I want to go here and do this and do that. And I was very homesick. So I came home and all my friends were like in YWAM. They were like, I want to go to Africa and be like this missionary and like do all these things. And I'm like, I just want to be in Bellingham.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I definitely had a moment right before I went to El Salvador, like our last day during our training school, where I had all these plans and things that I really wanted to do. I wanted to marry Steven. I wanted to go back to Bellingham and work at Camp Furwood in like a leadership position that summer. I wanted like, I don't even know if I knew what I wanted, but I had like a few things that I was like, no, these are my plans and this is what I really want to do.
Right.
And I felt like my whole training up to that point was like, hearing the voice of God and like trusting him, like surrendering these things. And for some reason in the back of my mind, I had this feeling that like, as soon as I was like, here, Jesus, are my things and my plans that I want to do, all of a sudden he'd be like, now I want you to go to Africa and be a nun and never get married and dig holes. And I don't know. So,
I mean, you were like looking at like a normal life.
Yeah,
you had done kind of a pretty extreme thing.
Yeah.
As like a young female.
Right.
And you were like, that was cool. But like, honestly, I kind of just want to go to my hometown and like get married and live like a pretty normal life. And that would be super exciting. And I'd be pumped with that.
Yeah.
Where a lot of, which is the opposite, like, because you grew up in this culture of people that are like going out into the world. Mm-hmm. The thing is like, that's not normal. Like people who grow up in like Christian spheres who actually are surrounded by missionaries, meaning they're and like ones who are going to pretty extreme places. Mm-hmm. Like that's not normal.
Yeah.
It kind of starts becoming normal if you're inside that group of people and you just kind of feel like, oh yeah, that's like, you know, so-and-so's parents like grew up in the bush in Africa.
Right.
It's not a big deal. And it's like, no, that's crazy.
It is. Yeah.
To most people in America, that's very abnormal.
Right.
And so it's interesting though that, and I don't think that would probably be uncommon where a younger person like kind of does a little bit of that and is like, I kind of just want to go home and like settle down and like live a normal life, still be like involved in the things you believe in and want to do your part, but like maybe living in the bush in Africa trying to learn some dialect and like serve the rest of your life there
Yeah.
isn't feeling like your calling in life.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I had like, I guess I got to that point where I just had to choose. Like, am I going to choose to like trust that God is who he says he is, which is he has good plans for me and he's trustworthy and faithful. So like, obviously if my perception of God was that he just wants to use me as this tool and like at whatever cost and whatever, then yeah, maybe it'll be something that I like have no desire towards. But like, am I going to choose to trust him even if I like am uncertain? And so I had this moment, I was sitting on this little dock and I was like, okay, like I don't hear your voice like saying like, okay, now I want you to break up with Steve, or like now go to Africa. And I wanted that so badly, but like before I had that, I think you have the choice like, okay, are you going to leap before you look, you know, or look. Yeah, leap before you look. Yeah. Before you jump in. And yeah, so I had this cool moment of like, God, I give this to you and I trust you. Right. And whatever you want to do with my life, I'm along for the ride. Like, ooh, and like, I don't know if I could say honestly that I was 100% knew what I was saying. Like, but I think it comes down to like a choice. Like, okay, even if I don't have all the answers, I'm choosing this. Right. And it's so crazy to see now, like how I could have never imagined the things that I get to do and the people I get to experience, because my like 19-year-old dreams were very like low. And I think there's this quote, I think it's C.S. Lewis, and he's like, we're far too easily pleased. And it's like comparing this kid making mud pies in a slum and when he can have a holiday at sea or something. And my best imagination of like the coolest adventure has paled in comparison to like what we've been able to experience now. Yeah. So I got to marry Steve. I got to be in Bellingham, which was definitely where I was called to be, and had the craziest experiences I could never imagine. And then sometimes when you hang out with someone that has these dreams and passions and desires, it's a little bit like contagious, their passion. So he was like, I want to travel for a year. And at first I'm like, I could barely do 5 months and I was so homesick. Yeah. But after a while it became my passion. And so like when you marry someone, you're like also marrying their like hopes and dreams. And so by the time we were leaving, I was like, I totally want to do this. Nice. And now looking back on it, like I can't believe we got to experience that. But it's so different than like Brittany's 19-year-old hopes and dreams. Totally. Yeah. I
feel like that happens. It's like, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but it's like there's a lot of people. Okay, like obviously I grew up in a small Christian town where I think at one point we had the most churches per capita in America or something like that.
Is it still that?
I'm pretty sure
like
it's not.
No,
but I think at one point it was. So
good job, Lyndon.
Christian, small town, farmers, like all of that, and grew up going to church and all of these things. So it's like I totally understand where you're coming from, but a lot of people like don't understand that at all. And I've seen a lot of people now that I've grown up and I've gotten older, like their belief systems have held them back because they're kind of waiting for God to like tell them to do something or not to do something. But like your mentality of like, I didn't audibly hear him, although I wish, like how great if an angel would just come to us and tell us, here's the plans for your life. Right. And it's like, that doesn't happen to most people or any or whatever. And some maybe
I'm still hoping for it.
It'd be awesome. It'd be great. Yeah. But in reality, it's like, we can't just like be waiting around, and also we can't be comparing our lives to other people.
Absolutely.
Specifically like how Christians compare their lives to people in the Bible, where it's like, well, that's how that worked for them. And it's like, yeah, but you're not Ruth from the Bible. Right. So maybe you're not going to do some huge grandiose thing that's going to like literally impact an entire nation.
Sure.
Like to that extreme.
Right.
And so different circumstances, different culture, different people, all totally unrelated to who you are. And so maybe just think about it and like do what you feel is right and good, and, you know, keep questioning yourself. And unless the doors are shut on you, it's like, don't not do it. Don't not go and do these things and experience the life just because basically a fear of like not doing what God wants you to do. When in reality, it's like, it's kind of boastful to think like that God cares about every little tiny, which cool. If he does, that's awesome. But he's not like trying to dictate every single moment of your life. And then you're just fearfully like, oh man, I wonder if I walk through this door, if he's going to like punish me and hate you. And it's like, wait,
I made a mistake.
So you're not even living the life that you think you are because you're living in fear under this. And it's like, well, that's, if you think about it, that's the opposite of everything that you think and preach. So it's like, get that out of your head, start living your life how you want, and like make some decisions. And if you believe like God is all loving, if you mess up, aka you are going to mess up, don't just go run and hide. Like be like, oh, that makes sense. That was stupid. And just keep going. Like instead of, so many people just are at that crossroads that you were at, and then either A, do nothing and they kind of just wither away in their life, or B, they make a decision because they think, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then they end up in Africa in the bush because they think that's what like God wants them to be doing or something. And it's like, oh, don't do that. Like, how cool is it that you just kind of were like, well, I'm not hearing anything supernatural or something. And it's like living your life and then getting married and like getting those things. And then getting to this part, we could skip kind of into like, so you've married, you guys are just working like regular jobs and stuff. Steve has this awesome dream of like wanting to travel the world, and hey, what if we took a year? And at first you're like, oh my gosh, really? That's intense, because I could barely do half a year. And then that kind of sparking a fire in you. How so many people, this is like a novelty thing. Let's travel the world for a year. How does a young married couple without like some giant savings account or anything, working pretty regular jobs, right? Like maybe even minimum wage. Okay. So in all normal people situations, like, oh, that's just a dream that we won't really be able to do. But then how did you go from the idea to actually getting tickets and hopping on a plane and starting this huge adventure?
It's an awesome question. It's definitely the number one question I think that we get to from people that want to do something like that, but can't fathom like, oh, how do you do that with like, working, like you said, like a minimum wage job.
Right.
And I think that ties into what you were saying before about your comparison. I think you do see so many people accomplishing the things that they've been working for a long time. You see other people getting to do these really fulfilling, purposeful things, but you don't really get to see a lot of that journey along the way. And I think we need more people to do stuff like that. And I want to be better at like being honest and transparent with the like normal everyday stuff. But for us, it was like we had set up our life in such a way that like each step was allowing us to be able to do something this big. Whereas if you had already like neither Steve and I, we didn't go to college. I went to Wacom for like a year and then traveled, and then I got married, and then I'm like, well, I'm already have a career doing dog grooming, and I got trained in a month, and I'm set for life. So like, we're really lucky in that way where we didn't have school loans. And a lot of people in their 20s have a lot in school loans. So like, pay off your debts first. Like, and that's something that, you know, if you look at like, oh, this couple got to travel for a year, you don't see that. Like, okay, we made these small sacrifices or choices along the way. Like, we're not lucky. We're just intentional. So we started saving 2 years before we left. So
2 years.
2 years. So the budget, I would say most people do, is like $50 per person per day.
Yeah.
Which ends up being like, if you go for a year, like $20,000 to $30,000 per person. $15,000 to $20,000 per person.
Yeah.
Which is like a year's wage if you're making like, well, less than that, I guess, for like minimum wage.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're able to save as much as you can, then like you have to work for like 2 years and put like everything else aside. Yeah. So, there's like a lot of little things you get to sacrifice. So like,
right.
I really love getting coffee a lot, and I can save $5 a day if I don't get coffee.
Right.
Not going out and eating and not like going to movies and things like that. Like, we still enjoyed those things and we still would do them. We weren't that like rigorous, and we definitely messed up a lot and would have months where we were like, well, didn't save anything this month. But our last 5 months before we went on the trip, we moved in with Steve's parents in Linden with his like little sister and their 3 dogs and our dog and 2 cats. And it was chaotic and lovely and amazing. And I love his parents so much. But like, we didn't pay rent that month. So, and I realized, like, both of us realized, like, wow, we're so lucky that we have parents. Like, even when we got back from the trip, we lived with my parents for 2 months. Yeah. And a lot of people don't have that. Either you don't have a good relationship with your family, or be like, it just wouldn't work out, or like you'd never have, they don't live in the same state, or whatever it is. Totally. That we're really like grateful in that sense. So yeah, I think making decisions along the way to sacrifice, but we've always been aligned with it to that goal. And I think sometimes people will want to save up for a trip, but they have other things that come along with it, like, well, and I want to do this, and it just pushes you back further, and eventually you just have to like, you have to choose that with everything, and then you get to see it happen, which not everyone can do, like, but
most.
I feel like a lot of the people that say, oh, I wish I could do that, I'm like, you could probably, like, I don't know your life story and what different things are like financially holding you back. Like, maybe you own a house now and you have to pay like a mortgage,
but even
could
then
you rent your house,
out.
Yeah, sure. But some people, like, that's where you get to weigh it. Like, I love it when people are like, I want to do this at all costs, and so I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen. But like, people are like, oh, I'm comparing my life to that, but I still want to choose this other thing more. Like, that's great. Like, do your thing. But I hate that. Like, I wish everyone could not compare as much and just do what they want to do, or just go for it and do it. If you can do it and you want to do it. Right. Yeah.
And doing it because you want to do it, not because you saw other people doing it. Yeah. And like you're saying, or just stop saying like, I wish I could travel for a year. Like, if you're somebody who says that, like, and you're realizing right now that you've been saying this for years, then it's like, that's just shame on you. You could have been on the trip by now, you know? Probably. Because it's a priority thing. Yeah. But the thing I love about your story is it took freaking 2 years. Okay. So idea to actually living out this dream was 2 years of diligent sacrifice, day in, day out, slip ups where it's like, dang, that just cost us this much more time now that we can't fulfill the dream that we have. Yeah. And being like, okay, let's get back on track and it's like working out and dieting where it's like, if you want to get to that end goal, like, it's going to take all this time because it does cost money. If you want to travel the world for that long, you just have to have some money to be able to make that happen. And if you don't have money saved up from inheritance, or like you sold your house or something that gave you a big chunk of money, that means potentially you're working minimum wage jobs, which means a year's salary needs to be not spent. So you have to work for 1 year without spending $1 of it. Right. So that means you probably need some money. So 2 years, and you're taking half of the money and just putting it away and not touching it. Right. That's like not easy. Right. But it's also possible. And that's how you guys were able to do that. Right. Exactly. And that's what's so cool. It's like, there's nothing special or different, or like, it's a very normal situation. You grew up small towns, moved to a very small town, like, and like got a job as a dog groomer. What was Steve doing at the time before your guys' trip?
A barista.
Yeah.
Yeah. Making
Minimum
coffee.
wage
Yeah.
and tips.
And tips.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like the most doable situation
Mm-hmm.
ever. Obviously, no sickness, no illnesses, no like having to support family or anything
Right.
like that happen, because
Right.
that could cut into a 2-year
For
plan.
sure. Yeah.
Like,
There's so
for
many things
sure.
that could come out.
But at the same time, it was making the decision at the point, which definitely there's so many things that would be like, well, we just can't because rent is too expensive. We
Right.
cannot save. Like, did you guys write out like a whole list of all your monthly expenses?
Yeah,
And then
and-
just went down the list of how can we cut these
Exactly.
to less and less and less?
We spent more money on things that we didn't need than like besides like the chunk of rent. Like,
right.
I think our rent, we were super lucky. Our house was like $675 a
Nice.
month at the time.
How was that? Was that a friend or
Well, it was this tiny house that was 400 square feet with our dog.
nice?
And yeah, so we're lucky that our rent in itself, and there's two of us, so it's
Yeah.
that and half,
Two
I guess.
incomes. Yeah.
Yeah. But what did you say? What was your question? I don't remember.
It was just the like bullet pointing out all your costs.
Yeah.
And so rent was pretty cheap.
Rent was not
But you
that
were living
much.
in a tiny space.
We
To
were.
a lot of, unless you live in New York or San Francisco or some other big cities in the
Yeah.
US, like everywhere else, people are like 400 something. How is that even
Yeah, it
possible?
was small.
And it's like,
With a Bernese Mountain Dog. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so, but it's like, it was doable.
Yeah, it was fine. And that was definitely like one of our standards. Like, I felt like a lot of our friends were saving up to put a deposit down on a house.
Right.
And for us, we were saving up to blow
Spend all of
of
it. To come
money,
home
to come
penniless.
broke again.
To live
Yeah.
in with your parents.
To live with our parents. Yeah. So I think you're right though. Like, people can do it. But I don't know. I think we don't realize how much if there's an app, Mint. If people use Mint,
Yeah.
have you used Mint?
Yeah.
It is so nice to
Right.
see all the stuff that you buy.
Yeah. And you can
that-
set goals on how much you want to spend on everything
Yeah.
and see how you blow past them
Yep.
every month.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, we had envelopes with cash in it for a while.
Yeah.
We did that for a little bit, and that was good to when you have a card and you swipe it.
Yep. It's
You get
easy.
you just it's free money.
Yep.
But when you you
Physical
physically get to
cash.
see, and then your reward is which for like 2 years we just put that in our savings. But I've seen other people that are like, okay, well, if I save money on groceries or if I drive a little bit further to get the cheap gas, then like the extra few dollars that I saved this week from that, I get to put in like my spending account
Right.
or like my allowance
Yep.
or my savings for my round the world trip.
Yeah.
So, and just realizing how much, yes, you're making these sacrifices now of your comfort and your happiness. Like, it would be fun to be able to go out with our friends and eat, but maybe we'll eat before we go and then go out and drink with them instead. Or
Right.
like, I don't know, like, but when you have a purpose behind it, like, okay, yes, we're doing this now, but like someday we'll get to go to like Switzerland and eat a fantastic meal there instead,
Right.
it becomes a little bit more like motivating.
Right.
But it's hard in the moment to just
Yeah.
have a clear vision, especially when it's so far away. You're like,
Yeah.
I
That's
just
a
want to
big
enjoy my life.
commitment.
Yeah.
Like, that's super hard. I think maybe always people have been bad at living in the future. I've actually heard that like humans are bad at that because like our brains developed in a time where we were like hunting and gathering, and there was never a need to be like, let's save for retirement. You were going to be dead. You weren't going to be alive then.
Yeah.
You did not save. You can't. What are you going to do? Like go stash all the food in a chipmunk? But it's like, that doesn't work because that's only for winter and then it's gone.
Right.
We couldn't. So we went through this huge amount of time as our brains developed, like with no need to ever think about the future at all. It would be ludicrous to be like, in 10 years, where do you think you'll be?
Right.
Everyone would be like,
Let's set some goals.
what the heck are you talking about, dude? We need to go catch an animal
Yeah.
today
Right.
to eat, and then we're going to move on.
Right.
Because if we stay here, winter's coming and we'll die.
Right.
And you're not going to live to be that old. So you might die next year. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. Good talk.
Right.
And so it's like our actual biological, like we were not made to be thinking of these long. And now we're living like, I feel like more and more we're hearing about people who are 100 years old.
Right.
That's like crazy that we're living this old. And so like these long-term, like planning for the future or planning for a goal or anything that's like years out is so against everything in our brain, which is like, no, just do what you need to do today. That's going to make you happy and that's fun. And like go out to dinner with your friends. That's like the equivalent of like going out and catching food to eat. It's like, do it now.
That's really interesting. I've never thought of it that way.
And so it's so difficult, I think, for people like to become really diligent about like, okay, in 2 years from now, we'll go on a trip and we'll eat good food.
Right.
It's like, that's so anti what our brain and body and like our indulgence wants to just do it now.
Right.
But at the same time, like what you're talking about is like the goal needs to be yours, like 100% purposeful, thought through, like, I want this so bad because if it's not, you're going to fail. Like you're going to fall off the bandwagon at some point. You're not going to last 2 years.
Right.
You're going to be like, this isn't worth it.
Right.
Because if it's not if you just saw these cool couples on YouTube, like going and adventuring around the world and everything looks perfect and beautiful, which we could talk about this maybe after this. Life is just like so epic and awesome and they're always happy and they're beautiful and it's just perfect.
Yeah.
You're just like, that's it.
Right.
Let's do it. Meanwhile, you're like a 20-something-year-old, maybe in a relationship, and you work a minimum wage job. So you're like, think about it, and you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to start saving some money. And then it's like 6 months later, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to save money for like another year and a half.
Yeah.
Just to maybe be able to do this. At that point, if it's not rooted in like such a solid desire for what you want and your passions and your dream, there's no way. It's not worth it at that point. And so whether that's traveling the world, I just think there are a lot of people who do want to travel the world.
Yeah.
Like
there definitely
the
is.
exact situation that you and your husband did.
Yeah.
Where you went for a year and went all over the place. I think there are a huge percentage of young people that want to do this, but society, definitely in America, does not like, they're not happy about that. How dare you take all that money that you worked for and blow it on traveling the world? You should have put it on a down payment on a house.
Right.
I think other cultures are a little bit better about like, yeah, take a year, travel the world. But like here, for sure, no. Like it's a hard, like, are you stupid? And then you're going to move back in with your parents? Like how low life, stupid, you're not adding anything to society.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. So thankfully, like you had parents who had done even some traveling and were supportive of it. Like, like your dad being like the best education is travel. That's not everybody.
No, definitely not.
Other people have parents that are like, no, go to college.
Right.
And why would you spend $50,000 traveling the world for a year and then you expect you're going to move back in with us and restart again?
Yeah.
So it's like, those are all real. And so it's like, whatever you want, if it be travel, which I think there are a huge chunk of people that want that. So hopefully the whole point of this is that your story would resonate with people who are in very similar situations, but maybe don't have the supportive parents or friends or grew up in like this Christian bubble of people who are literally all over the planet.
Right.
So it's very, people who literally live on every continent and every tribe on the planet.
Sure.
So it's like, that kind of wavers life too. It's like, oh, of course we can do that because I know like 20 people who live in all these crazy places.
Right.
And the other side of that is another person who doesn't know one person who's ever been to like a third world country and their parents are pressuring them to like just go to college just because. And definitely wouldn't be supportive if they're like, well, I'm just going to save up a whole bunch of money working a minimum wage job and then I'm going to spend it all and just kind of wing it traveling alone.
Right.
And then when I come home, could I live with you?
Right.
Until I get my stuff figured out again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like none of those are options. And so the reality though is you can do that. You don't have to have the blessings of like your parents and stuff. If you really want it, it's only going to make you a better person. Right. And so it's like, if you really, really want it, then you need to find other friends who maybe have done travel. Like go find people in your community who this is pretty normal to them, talk with them, try to find a family friend that you could move in with for the last 5 months so you can save more. And when you come home, you could crash on their couch.
Right.
Or
move into a van.
Yeah. And all of that, it's like, that's the hope, is that it's like super normal situation, but you just really got to understand that you guys made sacrifices.
Right.
And anyone who does anything, like you have to make sacrifices.
Right.
At first you said we were setting up our lives, which immediately I'm like, you mean you were making sacrifices in your life for something bigger? And it's like, so both are true. You set up your life, but you're setting up by sacrificing, which is literally, we did the same thing. You make a list of everything that you buy, and then you just, each item, go down, how can I cut everything by a massive percentage so that we can save a whole bunch of money so that we could do
for 3 years.
Nice. See, you went even hard. That's like more than what we did. We just were like, well, we don't need the newest iPhone.
Yeah. I guess I'll have the 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's always going to be a reason not to do something. Like you can talk yourself out of anything.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like just because you don't travel the world doesn't mean like your life is less significant than someone else. But like when I hear people that have a dream or desire, like a passion, like maybe it's not traveling, maybe it is buying a house.
Yeah.
And they're going for it. Like for some reason, seeing people doing something that they're passionate about really resonates with me and inspires me.
Yeah.
Like everyone's going to have their own story to tell, which is important why we don't compare to each other. But like, there's always going to be a reason. There's always going to be something to save for. There's always going to be something that you're thinking about, like, oh, well, what if someday I break my leg? And eventually, like, you're going to be 60 years old and retiring, and then you're going to have, like, back problems, and, like, you're not going to be able to do these things that maybe you desired to do when you were younger.
Right.
And that's okay. But, like, I think hopefully, like, our story can show that, like, maybe it is possible. Like, maybe there are, like, it's uncomfortable and hard to make those sacrifices, but like maybe it's possible, and maybe you should stop choosing your comfort and rationalizing with all the what ifs and like, oh, it's dangerous and like my parents won't support me and things like that. Like, okay, but if it's something that you really desire to do and you're passionate about, and this is like what you want to do, like do it, just do it.
Totally. Exactly.
I don't know. What do you feel like people what do you feel like holds people back the most? Like the like fear aspect of it. Like what's like the excuse that you hear the most?
It's literally just that. It's the fear. It's the naysayers to people's dreams. Mm-hmm. So someone says, man, I wish I could just do this thing, whatever that is, travel, start a company, be whatever that might be. And typically it's not real. It's like this fake monster naysayer it's all these added up moments in people's lives of a teacher saying something that just never left you. And it's totally unrelated to the subject now, but it's like all of these things all come together in that moment of like, what if I put myself out there all the way and do me, like 100% who I am, what I want. And well, now you're just really vulnerable. And so there's this conglomerate of like the naysayer, which isn't a real person. There's like trolls on the internet. There's some family members and stuff that kind of give you that weird look and whatnot. But those individually aren't enough to make you be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's too scary. But it's all of it together in like our society that just tells you you can't. Like for some reason, we're in this area where it's just like, And it's just not set up for everybody to do what they want to do. Like our whole society's set up to follow the leader and fall into place and live a status quo life. That is how our economy works. That is how everything functions. Like we can't all just become anarchists and do whatever the heck we want.
Yeah.
Like we do play a part in our culture and in our towns and in the world. And so it's like, you can't just go rogue and do whatever the heck you want. But we're way falling into status quo, and almost everybody can deviate a little bit out of that and start really putting themselves out there and like chasing something that they want to be doing. Right. And I think the only reason people don't is fear. That's it. If you weren't afraid, wouldn't you be doing more? I would. Like, I realized like even I was falling into that trap of like being afraid of like, what would people think? What if, really for me, it was like this moment of like, what if people just don't care that about other people's stories and like putting it all out there, including my own story. Like, what if people just don't care at all? And I'm like pouring my heart and soul into something and I die like a poor, penniless nothing. And then, and even the fear of like, and then what if later I'm like recognized and people are like, dang, he had something to say and share. And it's like, that'd be awesome. But man, I really don't want that to happen after I'm dead. Yeah. Like that was a legit fear. Don't wait for a
funeral to have your impact.
And so, yeah, that was finally like the last couple of years have just been really mulling around with my own, I guess, insecurities and fears of like my own voice in doing that. And so, I mean, this is part of something that I should have started a long time ago, but I just wasn't, I guess, ready. And it's too bad. Like, I wish there were more people talking through the real stories, not the people who randomly become successful or do crazy things, but because I just don't relate with any of those people. Like, I relate way more with you and Steve. Like, it's very normal, but you guys did something that's pretty extraordinary. And you're not going to look back on your life when you're on your deathbed and be like, oh man, I wish we didn't do that trip.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we would have bought a house.
Right.
Who cares? You're dying.
Yeah.
What does it matter what your house? Who cares if you went bankrupt in all of that? Nobody's thinking about those things when they're dying.
Right.
And so, but yeah, that was a long way to answer your question.
That was, no, it's exactly kind of what I hunch for most people. Because, yeah, I mean, if you look at the end result, everyone wants to leave an impact. Everyone wants to like be recognized and acknowledged and seen and loved and have a purpose. And I believe that every single person does have a purpose. And that gets me so pumped up when I'm like, okay, like, you want to groom dogs and that's what you're passionate about. Groom the best freaking dogs that you can groom. And like, just, you have this opportunity. Like, the people that I've got to meet, like, sometimes I have people where I can tell, like, you haven't talked to anyone this week. Like, your dog is your family. And for some reason, I have this opportunity to be a part of your life because I care about something that you care about. And you have this instant connection where, like, if they were walking down the street or at the grocery store, like, because you don't have that connection, like, but I think people stepping into, like, where they're at and doing that the best that they can, like, things that they're passionate about. Like, I feel like I really, my heart hurts for people that feel like they've have to, or actually have to do something that they don't enjoy every single day. And I realize that, like, I would say most people in the Western culture have this privilege that, I mean, like, since you're a kid, I don't know, like, the millennials, we are told, like, you can do anything you want to do, like, if you just work hard, which in some places, like, you don't have that choice, or you don't have those opportunities. And even in America, like, some people don't have that. I get that. But I wish there were more people I could see, like, and celebrate with them. This is what you're passionate about. Like, I could care less about you grooming dogs, but, like, that's cool that you are having your own impact in this place. Like, you're doing that really well, and, like, your influence is growing in that space, and you have like a voice, and when you're on your deathbed, you have all these people's lives that you've touched and like got to make the world a better place by doing the thing that you were passionate about, not what like, yeah, these celebrity travelers are doing. Like, that's cool. And I hope we can celebrate them too.
Right.
And what they're doing as like, I'm glad you're doing that. I'm not into that, or I wish I was into that, but I know that's not really what I'm passionate about. But yeah, I think maybe that's more of like the daily sacrifices, and the daily aspect is asking yourself, like, what is it that fires me up? Like, what are the things that either like I am sad about in the world and then go out and change that, or like the things that I love in this world and I want to go and like enhance that and display it.
But yeah, so the idea of like going into anything that you want to do, everything that we just talked about, I feel like it's really important for people to stop for a moment and to think about why to anything. Why do you groom dogs? Not because you wake up in the morning, you're super excited about technically how to groom the dog. That's not what is the reason why you get up in the morning and you're excited. It's more so because of those interactions you get with the owners of the dog and how you have this opportunity to speak into their lives. And it's like, so you're taking dog grooming and giving it purpose, and everyone can do that with anything in their life.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard. It took me like 2 years of like actively daily thinking, writing, reading, and like questioning everything about myself to be like, why do I do anything? Which sounds really dramatic when I say it like that. But it was kind of that moment where it's like, okay, if you really want to live a fulfilled and happy life, you kind of have to know why you're living life. And that's not like let's sit down for 30 minutes and write out some ideas of why. It's not. It takes time. And that was just like 2 years of kind of figuring it out. And now it's been like another 2.5 years of kind of slowly, step by step, like trying it out, like this purpose in life. And it's been awesome. Like once you've somewhat developed this idea and then you step out, the thing too, if you actually live your life truly to you, there is no one else. You're the only person who's just like you.
Right.
There has never been and never will be another person that is the whole makeup of you. And so that means there isn't a step-by-step of how to live your life to the fullest of you. Meaning, like, we're not made to be living status quo and like go to school, go to college, get a career job, get married, buy a house, have kids, retire. Like that model is not a real model for actual human beings individually. In a society, that's great. It makes everything function, work. Everyone kind of does their same thing day after day, and then you die. And it's like, all right. And it just kind of is this machine that's just going. But
which might, for a couple people, that might be
100%.
their
It is
fulfilling thing. Yeah.
It absolutely. That
awesome.
was something that I started realizing when I was like trying to shake people out of. I'm like, wait, they're not me. And I think that person's actually happier living that life.
Right.
That is their dream, and they're living it, and they're super pumped. And that's what I finally realized. I'm more interested in people living a happy life than like this crazy off the path life. But for most people, I think a small percentage, yeah, they're pretty happy in that. But most people, like, your real life is a voyage, meaning you have no map. You don't actually know if this idea, you just have this feeling that there's something awesome out there.
Yeah.
That's it. That's crazy. And then you get a little crew together and you hop in a boat and you just set off into the wide open ocean. And you're like, I'm pretty sure there's something really awesome out here. I just feel it inside of me. And it's insane. You've never gone on a voyage before. Everyone on the shore is like, you guys are going to freaking die. You realize that, right? And you're like, yeah, I totally get it. but I'd rather die out here than doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it's like, okay, if you can say that, then you know you're going after something that's true to who you are.
Right.
If you're not willing, then you probably haven't figured it out, which means you should spend more time like figuring out why.
Right.
And I feel like so many people get really pumped up about, yeah, I'm going to chase my dreams and do this. But then it's just inspiration. Right. There's no like hope in that context. It's like
inspiration for inspiration's
right.
sake.
So you're super pumped, and then it's just like you crash on the high and reality hits and you're like totally hopeless.
Right.
And it's because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you actually are firmly concreted in a strong like purpose, the crushing weight of all the sacrifices that you're going to make to be able to do this dream,
mm-hmm. like
inspiration alone will not fuel you. Right. You will start sinking and you'll probably just die. And then you'll go back and be like, I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just feel like it sounds so much like you and Steven kind of together came up with like why you do life. And obviously it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I'm saying. Like it's a voyage. You don't know. You're
right.
just kind of going with it. And it's based on a feeling of that it is out there somewhere. And
right.
the further you go, the more you realize like that was way off path. And then you turn back this way and you're like, this is actually way closer to
sure.
what we should be doing.
Yeah.
So there'll be whole seasons of like wandering,
right?
Where it's just like, yeah. The other analogy I give is like you just walk off the path
mm-hmm.
and you just start wandering through the forest.
Yeah.
And some days you're just like so 100% sure that you're just sprinting like as fast as you possibly can because you're just, you're like, it's that way. And you're just going. And then all of a sudden you like look up and you're like, frick, I'm so lost right now. Like I literally have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I maybe I just went the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all this doubt and all this like total uncertainty and you just sit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like you just need to wait and be quiet and think about it. And then it's crazy because then days will go by and then all of a sudden that feeling comes back and it's like this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you just start going again. And it's like that is the roller coaster of like a fulfilled life that if you know why, it's not super terrifying being lost.
Yeah.
Because you have such a purpose in your life that what's way scarier than getting lost in the woods or voyaging out in the open sea is buying a house, getting married, having a kid, growing old, retiring.
And then on your deathbed.
And then you're on your deathbed and being like, I hated my job.
Yeah.
Like I hated that I got 2 weeks of vacation every year. Like, and we went to the same spot. I kind of wish I would have done a couple of those things that I wanted to do and just never did it.
Right.
But
which is interesting because when you go back, it's not until you have the hindsight that you get to understand like, okay, maybe you're running through the woods and then you look back and you're like, wow, I'm so glad I ran into that tree because it caused me to have a concussion. And then I had to like stumble over this way and like, look where it's led me. Because honestly, like, to be really honest, there are times on the trip where I'm like, what are we doing? Like, we're just traveling and we're spending all this time, like, literally just doing whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
I did not set an alarm for like 10 months straight.
Yeah.
Well, except for like important things like catching an airplane.
Right.
But I think wherever you go, there's going to be life, the things that are here that you can see right now, like they aren't meant to like completely fulfill you.
Right.
The things that fulfill you now, like having a flip phone. I remember my first flip phone and it was the coolest thing in my life.
Yeah.
And I did use it again recently, but like now it's like, okay, now you have this iPhone 6 and that's what I have. I don't know what everyone else has now, but like when you first get it, it's like the best thing ever and you're so careful with it and you have it like perfectly protected. And then like at some point, like, it doesn't bring you that fulfillment, and then you need the next iPhone, and like everything in life isn't supposed to fulfill you completely, which I think is the most beautiful aspect of chasing your purpose, because in the end, maybe it's not like, oh yeah, now I got to go on this year-long trip and I'm fulfilled. It's like, now I can look back and see, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, like, when I was 19, that this is something that I would need in my life to grow me. And now I have all these, like, million new desires and passions. And because I chose to take this risk and do something that was scary and uncomfortable, now I'm chasing this new dream. And, like, now, like, probably every couple months, I would say, honestly, like, I go through that same thing of, like, what are we doing? What is life? Like, what is our purpose? And even after, like, these things that sometimes I just forget how, like, I love talking to you, because I kind of forget, like, that was really extraordinary that we had that opportunity, that we did something and we saw it through. But to be honest, like, I still struggle with that. I think I always will, like, okay, but what are we doing? But, like, at the beginning of last year, we got back from the trip, and our plan then was to move to Orcas Island, which, noted, there's no one there our age. I have one friend and her family, and besides, and they have a kid, and she had even told her husband, I'm not moving back to Orcas Island until I'm pregnant, because I need something to do with my time. And, like, we had all these hopes and dreams. I was literally going to build my own grooming salon. I was designing it, and, like, we had put in, like, tracks for, like, the plumbing. Like, this was going to happen. And we were just so bummed out. We're like, we can't, I don't know, it just wasn't where we're supposed to be. And it was so hard to be like, okay, like, what now? And because we chose not to do that, 1 year later, now we're like, okay, let's drive to South America in our camper van. And we bought a camper van, and we wouldn't have done that if we had done what, I don't know. So it's interesting, because, like, the things that you feel like maybe are earth shattering, or like running into a tree, like, you're like, what now? But all of those things are kind of like, I don't know, I just feel like you have to be okay every day to just be like, okay, I'm living for, I always tell Becca this, we talk about this a lot, you can either live for the red lights or the green lights. So you have like your traffic lights, and you can either be like, okay, I'm gonna wait till I have, like, a sign to go do this, and I'm just gonna sit here in my comfortable life, and I want to do all these things, but, like, I just really need to know for certain. And then you end up getting to your deathbed, and I'm like, oh, I never got that green light, oh well. Or you can live for the red lights, where you're like, I'm just gonna go and assume everything's green. God, will you slam the door shut, like, if this is not what I'm supposed to do, but, like, I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be running to, so I'm gonna run full speed. And I don't know, I think there's so much reward in just, like, embracing the unknown, because you have, like, so much you can get out of it, whereas if you never do anything, you'll never get anything out of it.
That's the thing. All of us start at ground zero. None of us know anything until we've done something. So we're all start the same. And so, like, another analogy here for you.
Your analogies are so, we got ships, we got woods.
This one's another solid one.
Okay, let's go.
It's like climbing mountains. Like, summiting your first mountain is the most insane idea ever. One day, Brittany's like, hey guys, I'm going to go climb that mountain. I'm going to summit it. And they're like, you know, you have never done that before, right? All the naysayer stuff. And most of the time, the thing with, like, naysayers is most of them are, like, well-intentioned, loving people. They really actually believe that you could get seriously hurt or die summiting the mountain.
Could be 100% possible.
But it's actually statistically such a small risk. Like, you're not actually, even though you have no climbing experience, all of that. Like, if you're going to go climb Mount Baker and you go through the process and go with someone who knows what they're doing, you could do that. And it's really actually not that dangerous. But the first one you summit is, like, small, and it's the hardest one. It's very difficult to get all the way to the top. people are telling you don't do it. They're like, this doesn't even make any sense in your life. Why do you want to go do that? And so people don't understand, blah, blah, blah. You summit it and people are like, that was pretty cool. Nice. But it was really slow and sloppy. So good for you. And then you get down and now there's the next mountain and you're like, guys, I think I want to climb that mountain. And again, people are like, okay, I thought that was like a one-time thing. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you going to go climb an even bigger, more dangerous mountain? You're like, well, I learned a lot from this one. And now a couple people want to come with me. So we're going to do this one.
Yeah.
So now you climb the next one. You get at the top and more people are like, oh, okay, that was kind of cool. Not during it. Everyone's like not watching because they're like, don't want to watch you fall off the side of a cliff because that's what they're thinking. But once you actually summit it, everyone is all super impressed and like, good job. Wow, that's amazing. And at that point, some people now are like, oh, so you kind of do this. And it's like, what do you mean? I did it last time.
Yeah.
But now it's switching in people's minds. And then the third one, now people are like, okay, this is like what you do. And it's like, yeah, but I'm still the same person I was when I did the first one.
Yeah.
And anyone can be this person. I'm not like any different than any of you. I'm just literally doing it. And it's really hard. It like was terrible. It took me longer to do the first one than this third one, but I'm getting a lot better. And so when you look back on your life and you're seeing like all the steps, like, and again, also just the things to be grateful for, like that you had parents who were supportive, that you had parents at all, and that then you weren't getting pressured into like just going to college just for the sake of going to college, that you were allowed to, you know, kind of explore doing other things. And all of those things were kind of your circumstances to be super thankful for. But then also, like, you still climbed the first mountain. Like, you still enrolled into this program that sent you to a very dangerous part of the world as a young female. And that was a mountain that was, in hindsight, you look back and you're like, wow, I didn't even realize all the things I learned and the techniques of the climbing and this and that, which led to the next summit that you did. And it also is like growing in your confidence. And now in your marriage, like that you guys did this big long trip, you got home, nobody died, life kind of just picked right back up and you're living life normally again. So the next summit is this idea of like, let's buy a van, renovate the whole thing and drive it to South America, which is like this next level mountain peak. But now people are like, yeah, you guys can do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wait, things have changed.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more normal that we live a very abnormal life.
Right.
And we're getting more confident in the ability to do, not to say when you're freaking on the side of a cliff that you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make the next ledge.
Yeah.
We might fall off.
Yeah.
And I might break a leg and we might have to start all the way over.
Yeah.
Like the danger of those things are all real and it gets harder and harder the more you go. But like your confidence grows, right? Even though, yes, you're still questioning, like, why the heck are we doing this? Is it worth it? Well, of course. Like there's only literally a few of you hanging on the side of a mountain. In the moments of that time, it's like, maybe we like are being way too ambitious right now. That's probably not unhealthy to think that way.
Yeah.
But to know, because you have hit mountaintops before, like so many people live their whole lives never summiting. They've never reached that top point.
Yeah.
That's what makes me sad. It's like seeing people, I relate so much with you. I mean, that's why I'm the person that's like randomly like hitting you up on Instagram being like, you need to do this fully.
Yeah.
You're made for this.
Yeah.
Like, because
You do bug me a lot about that.
yeah. I like so want to see people living out those experiences in their life, and it makes me like pumped to see that, and it's encouraging to me. And so everything you were saying I relate so much with. And so and I understand too that sometimes it's really hard, and having someone kind of encourage is really helpful, because I mean sometimes you are just kind of in the pit and you can't see anything. You're just like, this might have been a bad idea. Maybe we should have not bought the van. Maybe we should start thinking about buying a house. Maybe like, I don't know where this is gonna end up.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, we kind of are skipping all over the place. I do want to talk about your trip.
The next one?
No.
The last one?
The last one that you guys did.
Yeah.
And too, like from the perspective of a young female who like was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Travel around the world. And it's not like you were going to resorts and touristy areas and all of that. I mean, sometimes you guys would go to places that were like an actual tourist destination.
Sure. Yeah.
But you guys also were just kind of, I guess, just talk about that. Like, what was that experience and where all did you guys go?
Great question. It's interesting when you have, so when we started off the trip with CJ and Jackie, so another couple. So a year before we left, CJ and Jackie got married, and CJ had already planned to go with us on the trip. So he told Jack, he was like, so here's this thing I'm going to do. If you marry me, you're like also marrying this trip.
Nice.
And she had never really, she'd been on a missions trip before, like in high school, but like beyond that had not traveled. And their honeymoon to like a resort in Cancun. And so, and me and Steve had been to 9 countries before that. And some of those we had actually traveled with CJ before. He came with us to Central America. I didn't know him at all. He worked with Steve at Cruise and Coffee. And I was like, that's kind of weird that this random dude wants to come with like a married couple for 6 weeks in Central America. But CJ is like very down to earth, very go with the flow, very easy to please. So Jack married him. And so the 4 of us sat down and we wrote down a list of every country we've ever wanted to go to. And then we also got to write down 3 non-negotiable countries that like, I just want to go here just because, and even if no one else wants to go, we're going to go.
Yeah.
So we compared our lists. Most of the countries all matched up and stuff, and we condensed it down to like 30 countries. But it's interesting. We have 4 different people. You have 4 different travel styles, which I didn't even realize was a thing until you're traveling with another couple. Like Steve and I definitely lean more towards let's plan as we go. CJ and Jackie really enjoy like, okay, we're gonna do this, and then let's like plan out our next place where we're gonna stay, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And there isn't one that's like better or worse or anything, but when you are traveling with each other, those are things that you have to like sometimes make sacrifices or be like really humble about, like, okay, I'm gonna choose to do it this way, or like maybe this time
they're just very different styles of travel.
So Jackie was definitely the most, I would say, like, I want to see everything, I want to go here, and she did so much research of all these places, and it really got us to see and accomplish like so much of our bucket list, like so much more than I think me and Steve ever would have done. And then like Steve is like very good at like saving money, and so I would say our travel comfort level is very like mediocre. Like we stayed in like some of the weirdest like hostels, like we stayed in dorms for like $7 a night, or we stayed in like a private Airbnb and like had the whole house. So like some days we would spend a little bit more to have like a private room. Other times we would be in a horrible dorm.
What's like the worst place you guys stayed?
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Like when I say that, what pops in your head?
Is Izmir, I think it was called Izmir or Bodrum in Turkey. We stayed at this hostel and it was so hot, and every night they had these like raging parties, but it was like right outside our window on the deck, and so we're all like in our swimsuits like laying in these, luckily there's 4 of us, so when we were, was Jordan there? I think there was 5 of us, so we had like the whole room to ourselves randomly because there was enough of us, but like we had like 1 fan and it was like oscillating, and so every time the fan would kind of go by, you're like, thank you, but all night you're just laying there and you're like, when is this music gonna end? So I don't know, you just don't sleep and you just sweat and it's just awful. But
nice,
most of the time it was fine. But we tried to cook some meals when we could, but like we spent as much on food as we did our like where we would sleep.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would say I was definitely, CJ was like very, oh, we want to do this today? Great. Oh, we want to sit in our room and in front of the air conditioning and read a book? Great.
Yeah.
I was definitely more of the like, probably like, who are we going to talk to today? Maybe we should go to an orphanage. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I think I had a lot of times where I'm like, like I just got sick of like myself. Like I get to do anything I want. And so that was good, like to get to the end of myself and get over myself of like, okay, it's great to not work and like quit your job and not work and eat any food that you want to eat and go see all of these like famous sites that you've always wanted to see, but like it's not like the best thing. Like eventually it kind of gets old. So for me as a girl, what made it difficult is I am very extroverted, but I recharge by being alone. And when you travel with 4 people, a lot of times you don't get to be alone. Even when it like eventually when it was just me and Steve, I still like in a lot of countries like in India where the like guy girl dynamics are very strong and interesting. Like I'm not just going to go out. There are solo female travelers and they have a lot of wisdom and resources to know like what's safe and not, but like for the most part I didn't feel comfortable just going out and being alone. So a lot of times my alone time was jamming my headphones in my ears and listening to music really loud and just journaling, like completely surrounded by people. So yeah, as a girl it was kind of hard because I wish I could just go out and enjoy nature being alone, but sometimes that just wasn't a wise decision. So I would go like months without being alone. It was great.
Dang.
Or I take,
was
like,
that something that you realized was going to happen?
No, I did not know that about myself.
When did it kind of hit you and you're like, oh gosh, this is the reality for the next year?
I don't know. I feel
whenever
like
that kind of clicked.
I think right away I realized, but like it would come in waves of discomfort. Like sometimes I got to see like a really dark side of myself too, where there were times where I just like wasn't very friendly to the rest of our team. Like then I'd be like, why am I like so controlling or annoying right now? And a lot of times it was just because I was so drained and I wasn't taking care of myself mentally to assess myself and see like, okay, maybe I'll sit out from this one while everyone else goes and does this awesome tour, and then I can be alone and like recharge, you know. And I didn't do that. So yeah, I definitely happened right away, but there were some points where I had to apologize. Like at the end, our last day with CJ and Jack, I remember just feeling so convicted of just like different times where I just was not a good friend or a team member. And me and Jack had a conversation. I apologized for some things and we both like cried and it was great. And after that we were they traveled by themselves for a while and we traveled and we would meet up and stuff, but we traveled for 6 months together. It was awesome. And we'd always talked about like, oh, if we ever like as couples want to do something different, but for the most part we were so excited about seeing all the same things. But I think now looking back, like it is really wise to be able to, I guess, just have good communication of what are the things that I'm feeling right now and how can I plan ahead to set our day up in such a way that I will be like the best version of me that I can be.
Totally.
Yeah, each of us kind of went through some hard times sometimes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was just amazing. Like, and having people that you don't, like, they came and visited last week, and like having someone that you don't have to explain anything to, but like, you know that they just understand, you know?
Right.
Like they've been through the whole thing together.
Dude, that's the mountain peak, the climb that I'm talking about. Yeah. So mountain peaks, it's harder. Like that's what I like so much about, like, real life is hard. Like if everything's just perfect and a utopia, that's just like, we're all fake then. That's not real. And so people who go off on a whim and do something crazy, like traveling the world for a year, who have no business doing that, really, maybe like a tiny bit. You've been to quite a few countries and stuff, but still, like, to do it with friends too, which is also a really cool dynamic of your guys' trip. Because another thing that like friends say to each other, let's go travel the world for a year. And it's like, I know nobody. You guys are the only people that I know of who just, as a like two couples coming together and then going out on this, is so unique, but also really cool. And the reality is that there's a lot of like just really hard times when you're in these situations, because you're in a new place all the time.
Yeah.
Every time you go somewhere, you don't know where you go to get food. You don't know where anything is.
No.
Constantly.
Or the language.
Or so you can't communicate. You don't know how much. If you just got ripped off and there's 3 other people that are saying like, no, I think we did just get ripped off. And you're like, I don't even care, but I don't think we did. And then it's like, yeah, just that whole dynamic. But it's like that moment of like apologizing and then crying, like in the moment, that sucks. Like, let's be real, that's not fun. And everything that led up to that, that's not fun.
Yeah.
That's like sucky situations, right?
Right.
And that's real. That wasn't great. But like, you guys were really living life, and like as a whole group of people. And so now you're at the point where they come over, and like you just said, like, you don't have to say anything. Like, you guys know each other. And that's what's so awesome about life. It's like, if people just didn't avoid hardship, and if people just realize like life will always have hardships,
for sure,
and we should do it together. We shouldn't like hide from each other or pretend and put masks on that we've got it together and whatnot. We should be vulnerable, like after a while realizing like, I've not been a good friend.
Yeah.
Like, the sooner we can realize those moments and just be honest and upfront about the situations, the better. Because imagine if you didn't realize those things and you didn't apologize and you just let them go off on their part.
Right.
Like, probably wouldn't be having meetups at home, hanging out and being like, I just know you guys so well.
Right.
It would be potentially, if you were just wearing a mask and being like, I didn't do anything bad, whatever. Okay, have fun on your guys' trip without us. That would just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And typically, I feel like truth always comes out and it wins in the end, potentially much later. But it's like, it's also the lies and the deceits and the pretending is building and building and getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so all that to say is, again, like, real life is just difficult. Like, it's just hard to like go to another country and see kids who are like tiny and they're like 20 plus pounds underweight, and just being like, there's really nothing I can actually do right now. And that really sucks. But that's also just life. So I'm not going to pretend like you don't exist.
Right.
Or even more real and to home, like in Bellingham, there's lots of homeless people around. And all across America, there's lots of homeless people around. And we so often just don't even look at them because we're just like, just want to avoid the realization of whatever their life is. And then we just come up with our own stories of what their story is. And in reality, like, just looking at them and acknowledging them and saying hi would be huge. That would be awesome.
Treating them like actual
just treat them like a normal person, because, oh, guess what? They are. They're just a person. You don't have to, even if they ask you for money, just say no and just be like, I hope you have a good day. Look them in the eyes as a person, tell them no. Just like if I asked a friend and they were like, I'm not going to give you any money. Why would I? No. And so it's like, just treating people as humans and not just pretending like bad stuff doesn't happen. Because in the bad stuff is where such amazing, deep rooted like humanity can actually come out of it.
For sure.
If we're living in those things and we come alongside people, if it's our own selves and we openly share with people and are being vulnerable, hoping that they'll kind of just be there with you.
Yeah.
And not always having to be like, I know how to fix your problems, that you're so mean when we travel.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, maybe we should just cry and hug and we're still going to go on our own little trip and like do whatever. And so, okay, that was like a super long rant about, I don't know, whatever, life.
Well, you bring up a good
stuff.
point about comfort.
Yeah.
And difficult things. I think that, wouldn't you say our culture, I'm inspired by like your recent trip to Iraq.
Yep.
Iraq. Because to me, like Middle Eastern countries are like still, oh, that's sketchy. Like I wouldn't do that. That's too scary. But it's interesting how our culture is like very much so the opposite, where we value comfort and safety a lot. And a lot of the things that are like sold to us are to like make us happy in the moment, kind of. I don't know. So I think, I don't know, it was very interesting. Every trip that I go on, when we go to hostels, I think everyone should experience a hostel, because even if you're older and married and could care less about like the party aspect, it's very interesting seeing people that their idea of travel is that it was going to completely satisfy them. And then when they burn out, which everyone burns out, we made it 10 months and we're like, yeah, let's go home. And it was great. But like, I think it can be very disappointing when you hit that hard moment and you realize like, oh, this doesn't completely fulfill me or satisfy me, because it never was intended to do that in the first place. But it's interesting how now looking back at the year, it wasn't like the Taj Mahal that is my favorite memory. Like we went to India because of the Taj Mahal. Yeah. But we went to India in June and it was the worst time we could have ever gone because it was 115 degrees every day. But we would go out at nighttime. Yeah. So we went out at night and in Agra, and I got to like dance in a street like wedding music video that was like straight up Bollywood. And it's funny because like those are the things that I remember about the Taj Mahal. Like maybe your journey, like you're like, okay, this is what I'm going towards, and then you get there and it's difficult, and then you realize like, oh, like all of these difficult things have led me to this new place I didn't even realize I needed. And now I wouldn't trade those hard things for the world, because it's like they've grown me into who I am today and like changed my dreams and desires for the future, you know? But I don't know, I think I admire like your courage to like, I don't really understand how you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Iraq. That's sweet. But like, I don't think we should be afraid of things that are uncomfortable. I think we should be wise. Yeah. And use the wisdom of other people that have gone before us. Yeah. But we shouldn't let our like the discomfort and the risk hold us back from experience it, because sometimes that's the most important part. Yeah. I mean, that was exactly it. Yeah. It's having a strong purpose of why. And so like my wife and I are on the same page. Yeah. Like when I'm like, hey, I want to go to Iraq for my 30th birthday. It, one, wasn't super surprising to my wife. And two, she's on board. Like we're a team, and it's not like, hey, I'm doing this, so just deal with it. Yeah. It's very purposeful. And yeah, like I made connections with nonprofits who've been in the area for a long time, asked if I could be with them, and it, very like cool. Be put into situations that aren't dangerous. Sure. And so, yeah, being smart about it for sure. But it's like, yeah, I think it's having a strong purpose in your life. And so like the hope would be that later in life, when my kids are older, like they can look back and be like, oh yeah, we can do like whatever we want to do, because look at mom and dad and how they live their life. They're an example. So we want to live a life by example, not by telling our kids, but just doing it. So then they look back on us. And the cool thing about what we live in now is like, we're making videos and photos and all this stuff. So they'll look back and be like, what, we grew up in an Airstream until I was like 6, 7, or however long we keep doing this. Sure. And then two, they'll be like,
wait, didn't dad go to like Iraq for his birthday or something like that? And then the hope would be that they look into it and be like, oh my gosh, we were like at war with that country when dad went there. And then that example leads to like, oh, nice. Yeah. Like people are people everywhere, which was the idea of why I went to Iraq, is because same, like I didn't have any good thoughts when I heard Iraq.
Sure.
It was instantly the morning on 9/11 as a kid, as I walked into my living room and the news was on. And I remember like one of the Twin Towers was like burning down to the ground. And I watched live on television the second one just crash right into it. And then everything since then, just like terrorism, like Al-Qaeda, then ISIS, and then the wars. And then I have friends who've been like at war and are like disabled vets now. Like I just don't have any good thoughts of an entire people group. And that made me really sad, because I was like, I know from experience of going other places that have bad reps that there are tons of just normal people. There are moms and dads and kids who are, they're just wanting to live a good life, and they're awesome people, and their culture is amazing, everything. So I was like, I know that exists in Iraq, and so I need to go experience that for myself. And then the hope would be that would inspire other people. That's the whole point of all of it. So, I mean, that's why. And so far, it's been really cool. Like, we haven't even released the film, but it's like the little snippets, even just going and people being like, what? So many people just commenting like, wait, what? And I'm like, that is perfect, because it was amazing. Like, everyone was super hospitable, super cool. It was amazing. But yeah.
I can't wait to see that.
Anyways, we could talk for another 2 hours for sure.
Yeah, this is a bad idea. I feel like both of us
I know we could talk a lot. That's why I'm doing a podcast, because I'm like, we'll just do long form podcasts and just talk, because this is what I do anyways.
Yeah.
But I do want you to give us like a synopsis of this next adventure that you guys are doing.
Sure. Yeah. I think this is funny, but one of the hardest parts about traveling for a year was we have this really cool dog. His name is Indy.
The best. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's the best dog in the world. So that was a bummer, leaving him for a year.
Yeah.
My friends Annika and Tyler watched him for free for the entire year. I owe them a lot of babysitting. But we were like, what if our next trip we like went overland and like had a camper van that was like insulated enough that we could actually do it.
Yeah.
And also after the trip, realizing that our like our travel style is definitely more, we love to be able to get to a place and see, like, be there for more than like 3 days of just doing the tourist things and actually get like submerged into the culture. You don't get that if you're there for like 3 days. And on average, I would say we moved around in cities like every 2 to 4 days.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
For a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
10 months.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So we saw a lot, which was great. But there were some times where we got to a place where like, I wish we didn't already book our plane ticket, because now like I totally could have stayed here for way longer. Or you get to India and you book everything out in advance. And then you're like, wow, I'm really glad we have 5 weeks and 115 degrees, you know?
Yep. So
there's definitely like a freedom aspect in the traveling. But also I definitely like what you've been able to do is so inspiring to me, like as a creative person, like telling people's stories, like people, just ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and through what you create you're making them feel like seen and loved and encouraged. That pumps me up so much. And so I think when if you're able to go, like not being a physical burden to them, like if we had our own house where we're like, hey, we want to come, and like we think what you're doing is really cool, can we partner with you, can we like jump into what you're doing, or bless you, like can we make you meals and stuff, like you guys are awesome, and like how are you doing with like exposure, like maybe I can use my skills and make you a video, or like help you build a website,
Yeah.
or
and are you talking with like nonprofits?
Sure, yeah, or whatever.
Just individual people
yeah,
too.
or like maybe your story like can inspire someone else in whatever they're doing. Like, oh, this person did what they were doing and like now I'm inspired and I want to do my thing.
Yeah.
So with the travel aspect is one thing, but being able to do those kind of things that I'm actually passionate about, van life definitely like opens up that door.
Right.
And also like, I don't know, I think videography in itself, like moving from, okay, I know I'm going to make this much money per week grooming dogs to, okay, now I have to start like somehow marketing myself and my business and like probably do some things for free for a while or like really cheap or whatever. Like having the expense of your house taken out, I think is definitely very attractive to us to like have that freedom to fail. Like if it doesn't work out, well, we're already in our van, so
exactly. It can't get any worse than that.
Yeah, exactly. But I know we'll love it. We rented a van in Spain and Portugal, and then we also rented one in northern Chile in the desert. So both times that was good to realize like what I hated and what I didn't, and for the most part it was really fun. So we've definitely, the design that we've made now is like very catered to me and Steven and our dog very specifically. But yeah, hopefully next fall 2020 maybe we'll start driving to South America.
So this is another one of those moments where it's like planning, saving, building out a van, like, but it's not gonna happen in a couple weeks.
And we also have zero skills when it comes to building. But my dad, obviously he's like super good with cars, right? But also he has like a million hobbies and can like do like custom cabinetry and electrical and everything. So
and the van's out with your dad right now.
It is. So we just stripped everything. We're really good at destroying things. So far not good at
building
making things,
back.
But so we'll finish building it out and then we'll see. And I don't know, I think we always try to stay flexible with like the unknown. Like last time we're like, okay, what if we have $30,000 and all of a sudden like your little sister, something happens. Like I want to stay in a place where we're still like generous with like our time and our money and like flexible, like not so set and like this is what we're doing, but like I said, like living for the red lights. Like this is what we're going towards, and maybe this is just the stepping stone to whatever's next. Maybe I'll accidentally get pregnant and like I don't know. I think we'd still live in the van. But like I don't know. I want to stay open to be participating in the journey and not just like romanticizing the end process. So
that was good.
If we get there, fall 2020.
Heck yeah.
Follow our YouTube. Man. We'll see how that goes. I have a lot to edit before then. But
I know you still have so much of your world travel.
16 more countries.
16 more countries.
Yeah.
Gotta get on that.
Yeah, I know.
But everybody can check out a whole bunch of what you've already done.
Yeah. And Steve channel. Actually, he journaled every single day. So I did like, video was definitely like my like processing journaling. Steve wrote down every single cent that we spent.
Oh, nice.
Every single day. So like it's been like 2 years now, so things might be a little different, but I think for some people, like when we would watch travel videos, that was something we're really interested in. Like how much would a good budget be for like if you went to Thailand or if you went to Switzerland, or things like that. So totally. I would love to use like our experience to help motivate other people or like I don't know, but we'll see. I gotta finish up first.
Yeah, exactly. And then start into this whole van life adventure too.
Yeah, while we're working full time. Yeah.
While working full time. Yeah. Great. Perfect. Easy.
Yeah, exactly.
So are you gonna, before you leave, move into the van?
I hope so. I think we'll probably end up on Orcas Island again, like before we leave. So
in the van.
Yeah. So we lived in one of my dad's trailers out there for a while, which was rad. Yeah. He's turned it into an Airbnb now. So if anyone wants to go to Orcas, it's great. So we'll probably live there for a little bit, maybe work, and then hopefully learn. I feel like that'll be a good time for us to learn all the basics of like, how do we fix this or how do we check this? So if we're on the road and something breaks down, like my dad is such a good resource for that. And he's really good at teaching those things. So, yeah, I think we probably won't live in it before, but
gotcha.
I would like to definitely live in it when we get back.
Yeah.
At least right now. Maybe we'll get back and be like, I need a house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, we could talk another hour about photography and video and business and there's so much we could talk about.
Yeah.
But this was awesome.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think it's accomplishes the whole point. Like, it's cool to hear the realness of a story of that, you know? I don't hear too often about the, you know, couples that get together, save up forever, go on this awesome trip, which is awesome. And you had so many good times and stuff. But the real moments of, you know, saying sorry about what you'd been like and crying and that kind of stuff too. And so just thank you so much for being like open and honest and vulnerable here and sharing the wholeness of the story, which again, I think is just more inspiring. It's the next part. It's the hope giving part because I'm like, oh yeah, I could see finding out that I'm a horrible person on a year-long trip where the other things I've seen are really inspiring because it's like, man, I really want to travel the world for a year. That looks so awesome. And it pumps you up. But then it leaves you not feeling super hopeful because you're like, well, I'm not that perfect of a person like that person because they have it all together.
Yeah.
They curate it to be so perfect. So yeah, super cool. I love your story. I love what you guys are doing. It's inspiring to our family. We love what you guys are doing. Your dog grooming business is amazing. Your little videos and posts of all those dogs are awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
It's great. It's so good. But
well, thanks for having me. I think I feel honored because I feel like we're in the middle of our story, and I think it's really easy to celebrate like all the end stuff. And I feel like going forward, there's a lot of things I want to accomplish and achieve. So I'm like very humbled and honored that you care about where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And especially because we definitely look up to you guys a lot with your lifestyle and the things that you guys have chosen. And like, obviously your career path is very like personally inspiring. So
thanks.
I mean,
we're in the middle of it too, which I think is why I'm liking this.
Are.
We're all in the I mean, in reality, people who've made it, like they're still in it.
Yeah.
It's just, they have clout, I guess.
They got clout.
Right? Isn't that the only difference?
Sure.
Like, they have made it. But anyways, yeah, that's super cool. Super inspiring. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And maybe in like a year or two, 2021, we'll do an update.
Okay, cool.
It'll be great.
Let's do it.
Well, how long are you going to be gone? Maybe it'll be 2023.
I don't know. I literally don't even know. I think it takes like at least 6 months to get down to
at
like
least,
Argentina.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see.
Depending on how much you want. Okay, we could keep talking forever. We're going to end this now.
Thank you.
Bye.